Have you ever walked into a room and felt like everyone was in on a joke except you? Now imagine walking into your own wedding. A wedding with 500 guests, a $100,000 budget, imported flowers from Holland, and a 12-piece orchestra, only to discover that everyone knew something you didn't. The groom, he was an actor. The marriage, completely fake. The purpose? To have me declared mentally incompetent and steal everything I'd built. But here's the thing about betrayal. When you survive it, when you document it, and when you turn the tables, that's when you discover who you really are. My name is Sarah Chen, and this is the story of how my entire family spent 2 years planning the most elaborate deception imaginable, and how I destroyed them all with a single wedding video. It started 3 years ago, though I didn't know it at the time. I was 28, and I just sold my first tech startup for $12 million. Not life-changing money in Silicon Valley, but enough to make me comfortable and apparently enough to make me a target. I remember the exact moment everything began, though I wouldn't understand its significance until much later. I was sitting in my father's study, signing paperwork for my company's sale, when my stepmother Helen walked in with tea. "You know, Sarah," she said, setting down the china with her practiced smile, "you work too hard. When was the last time you went on a date?" I laughed it off. Classic Helen, always concerned about my love life instead of celebrating my success. My father, Richard, chuckled from behind his desk. "Leave her be, Helen. Sarah's got plenty of time for all that." But Helen persisted, as she always did. "Actually, I have someone I'd like you to meet. Marcus. He's a consultant, travels a lot for work, but he's brilliant. Just your type." Just my type. Looking back, I should have wondered how Helen knew my type when we'd barely had 3 meaningful conversations in the 5 years since she'd married my father. 2 weeks later, I met Marcus at a charity gala my family had mysteriously insisted I attend. He was everything Helen had promised. Charming, intelligent, well-traveled, 6'2" with dark hair and green eyes that seemed to see right through me. We talked for hours about everything from quantum computing to obscure Netflix documentaries. "I have a confession," he said as the evening wound down. "Your stepmother told me all about you, but you're nothing like I expected." "Oh? What did you expect?" "Someone more guarded, calculating. She said you were all business." I should have caught it then. The way he studied my reactions, the practiced nature of his surprise. But I was lonely, successful, and tired of being the only single person at every family gathering. We started dating. Marcus was perfect, maybe too perfect, but I pushed that thought aside. He remembered every detail I told him, showed up when he said he would, and somehow always knew the right thing to say. My family loved him immediately. "Finally," my brother James said at a family dinner 3 months into our relationship, "Sarah found someone normal." My mother, who divorced my father when I was 15 and usually avoided family gatherings, even made an appearance. "He's wonderful, sweetheart," she gushed. "Don't let this one get away." The red flags were there, wrapped in ribbon, and presented as gifts. Marcus never introduced me to his family. "They lived in Australia," he said. His job was vaguely defined, but supposedly very important. He traveled constantly, but always had time for every single family event. 6 months in, my father pulled me aside at my birthday party. "Sarah, I know this might seem fast, but when you know, you know. Your grandmother's ring is in the safe when you need it." My grandmother's ring. Worth $200,000, passed down through 4 generations. I was touched that my father would offer it, especially since Helen had been eyeing it since their wedding. But the real orchestration began at month 8. Suddenly, everyone had opinions about my relationship. "You should lock that down," my coworker Jennifer said over lunch. We'd barely spoken before, but suddenly she was very invested in my love life. "A spring wedding would be perfect," Helen suggested constantly. "The family estate would be gorgeous in May." Even my bitter mother and distant father seemed to unite over Marcus. They started having family dinners every Sunday, something we'd never done even when they were married. At month 10, Marcus proposed. It was perfect. A private beach at sunset, my grandmother's ring, my father had given it to him, and a photographer who just happened to be walking by to capture the moment. Yes, I said, because what else do you say when everyone you love is watching from the dunes, having somehow known to be there? The wedding planning began immediately, and I mean immediately. Helen had a binder. A binder. 2 inches thick, with color-coded tabs and a timeline stretching back months before Marcus had proposed. I knew you'd say yes, she winked. Call it stepmother's intuition. The wedding planning consumed everything. Helen took charge with military precision, and suddenly everyone wanted to be involved. My estranged mother became my best friend overnight, coming to every dress fitting, every cake tasting, every flower arrangement meeting. I miss so much of your childhood, she said tearfully one day at the bridal salon. Let me do this for you. Even my brother James, who hadn't voluntarily spent time with me since high school, became wedding obsessed. He volunteered to handle the logistics, coordinating vendors, managing the budget, organizing the venue. It's the least I can do for my little sister, he said, though he'd never called me that before. The wedding grew beyond anything I'd imagined. What started as a simple ceremony and ballooned into a 500-person event at my family's estate in the Hamptons. My protests were gently but firmly overruled. You only get married once, Helen insisted. Let us do this for you. The guest list was particularly strange. Half the people I didn't recognize. Distant relatives, Helen insisted, couldn't be excluded. Business associates of my father's who would be offended if not invited. Friends of friends who had somehow become essential to the celebration. Meanwhile, my actual friends were oddly excluded. My best friend from college couldn't come. The date conflicted with her sister's graduation, which seemed to have been suddenly rescheduled. My mentor from my startup was traveling for a conference that had been mysteriously moved to my wedding weekend, but I was too caught up in the whirlwind to notice the pattern. There were dress fittings, 7 of them, because Helen was never quite satisfied, cake tastings that required the entire family's presence, flower arrangements that needed to be perfect. Marcus, meanwhile, became increasingly distant. Work, he always said, disappearing for days at a time. When he was around, he seemed nervous, constantly checking his phone, having hushed conversations with my father. Pre-wedding jitters, Helen assured me. Richard was the same way. 3 months before the wedding, things got stranger. My family started asking odd questions about my company, my finances, my legal arrangements. Just making sure everything's in order, my father said when I questioned him. Marriage is a big step. You want to protect your assets. They had me meet with a lawyer, their lawyer, to discuss prenuptials and estate planning. The documents were dense, complicated, full of legal jargon I didn't understand. Standard stuff, the lawyer assured me. Just sign here, initial here. I almost did, but something made me pause. Call it intuition or paranoia, but I said I wanted my own lawyer to review everything first. The room went cold. Don't you trust us? My mother asked. Her voice hurt. Of course, but this is a big decision. I should be thorough. They backed off, but I noticed the looks exchanged, the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. That's when I started documenting everything. It began small, recording conversations on my phone, taking photos of documents, backing up emails. I told myself I was being paranoid, that wedding stress was making me imagine things. Then I hired a private investigator. I know how that sounds. Who hires a PI to investigate their own wedding? But something was wrong, and I needed to know what. The first report came back 2 weeks later. Marcus Thompson didn't exist, at least not the version I knew. The man I was engaged to was actually Marcus Kowalski, a struggling actor from Brooklyn. His IMDb page showed bit parts in commercials and 1 episode of Law & Order. I sat in my car outside the PI's office, staring at the headshot of my fiancé, advertising his availability for corporate events and private parties. The second report was worse. The wedding venue had been booked 2.5 years ago, 6 months before I'd even met Marcus. The deposits traced back to a shell company owned jointly by my father, stepmother, and brother. The third report broke me. The lawyer I'd almost signed papers with specialized in conservatorships, legal arrangements where someone is declared mentally incompetent and their assets are controlled by a guardian. The papers I'd nearly signed would have given my father complete control of my finances if I was ever deemed unable to make rational decisions. And what's more irrational than insisting your wedding is fake when 500 guests say otherwise? But the final piece came from an unexpected source. My mother's assistant, Kevin, called me one night. "I shouldn't be telling you this," he whispered, "but I can't watch this happen. Check your mother's email. The password is your childhood dog's name and your birthday." I found everything in a folder labeled Project Reset. 2 years of emails between my family members, planning every detail. The psychiatric facility they'd chosen, a high-end place in Connecticut where I'd be treated for my breakdown. The division of my assets. My father would get the company shares, Helen would get my real estate, James would get my liquid assets, and my mother would get my investment portfolio. There were even emails about Marcus's performance. "He's getting too attached," Helen had written 6 months ago. "Remind him this is just a job." "Increase his payment," my father had responded. "We're too close to fail now." The most horrifying email was from my brother. "What if she doesn't break? What if she just goes through with the wedding?" My father's response chilled me. Then we go to Plan B. A tragic honeymoon accident. Marcus knows what to do. I had 8 weeks until the wedding. 8 weeks to plan my revenge while pretending everything was normal. 8 weeks to smile at family dinners, gush about flowers with Helen, and kiss my fake fiancé without throwing up. But I had something they didn't know about. A second tech company I'd started under a different name. While they thought they knew all my assets, I'd been quietly building another fortune. And I had friends they didn't know about, the ones mysteriously unable to attend my wedding. I met with my real lawyer, Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname. She reviewed everything and whistled low. "This is conspiracy to commit fraud, false imprisonment, attempted murder if we count Plan B, and about 15 other crimes," she said. "We need the FBI." But I wanted more than legal justice. I wanted them to feel what I felt, the betrayal, the humiliation, the shattering of everything I thought was real. So we made a plan. First, I started documenting everything with hidden cameras. Every family dinner, every wedding planning session, every conversation about my fragile mental state. Second, I hired my own actors. If they could have a fake groom, I could have fake wedding guests. 50 of them, all trained in improv, all briefed on their roles. Third, I created a presentation, a very special presentation for my very special day. Fourth, I moved my real assets. Everything they thought they'd get was quietly transferred to trusts and shell companies they couldn't touch. I left just enough to make them think their plan was working. Fifth, I reached out to Marcus. Not in person, that would have been too dangerous, but I found his real email, his real life. He had a daughter. Her medical bills were crushing him. That's why he'd taken this job. I made him a better offer. The hardest part was pretending. Smiling as Helen showed me flower arrangements she'd chosen 2 years ago, laughing at my father's jokes about marriage, hugging my mother as she pretended to care about my happiness, joking with James about wedding day nerves. "You seem stressed," Helen observed one day, 3 weeks before the wedding. "Everything okay?" "Just excited," I lied. "This is everything I ever dreamed of." She smiled, satisfied. "Good. We just want you to be happy." 2 weeks before the wedding, they started the gaslighting in earnest. Little things at first. Moving my keys, changing appointments without telling me, insisting I'd agreed to things I hadn't. "Are you feeling all right?" my mother would ask constantly. "You seem confused lately." "Maybe you should see someone," James suggested, just to talk through the stress. They'd even recruited my workplace into it. My business partner, David, started expressing concerns about my decision-making. Emails I hadn't sent appeared in my sent folder. Projects I'd approved were suddenly canceled. Jennifer from HR scheduled a meeting about my erratic behavior. "We're worried about you," she said. "Maybe you should take some time off. Focus on your wedding and your health." I smiled and agreed, all while documenting everything. Jennifer didn't know I had access to the company's email server. I saw the payment from my father to her account, $50,000 to help convince everyone I was losing it. 1 week before the wedding, Marcus tried to warn me in his own way. "Are you sure about this?" he asked during our final fitting. "Marriage is permanent." "Unless someone has a tragic honeymoon accident," I said casually, watching his face pale in the mirror. "Sarah, It's okay, Marcus, or should I say Marcus Kowalski. How's your daughter? Still need that surgery?" He went white. "How did you—" "I know everything, and I have a counteroffer." May 15th dawned perfect and clear. The family estate looked like something from a magazine. White tents, crystal chandeliers, imported orchids everywhere. $500,000 spent on my humiliation. I stood in the bridal suite, surrounded by women who claimed to love me. Helen fussed with my veil, a family heirloom she'd probably already mentally pawned. My mother fixed my makeup, wondering aloud how much my jewelry was worth. Cousins I hadn't seen in years suddenly acted like my best friends. "You look perfect," Helen said, and for once she was telling the truth. I did look perfect, the perfect victim for their perfect crime. "5 minutes," the wedding planner called out. My father appeared in the doorway, tears in his eyes. Actual tears. The man who hadn't cried at his own mother's funeral was crying at his fake daughter's wedding. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," he said, offering his arm. "Ready?" "I've been ready for 2 years," I said truthfully. He mistook my meaning and smiled. The music started. 500 guests rose to their feet. Marcus stood at the altar, handsome in his tuxedo, playing his part one last time. The officiant, another actor I discovered, smiled benevolently. We reached the altar. My father kissed my cheek and whispered, "I love you, Sarah." The lie hurt more than all the others combined. The ceremony began. The officiant spoke about love, commitment, and trust. Several audience members wiped away tears. My 50 actors sat strategically placed, phones ready. "Before we continue," the officiant said, "the couple has prepared something special." This wasn't in Helen's script. I saw her stiffen in the front row. "Love is about truth," I said, turning to face the audience. "And I want to share our truth with all of you." The projection screen descended. Helen half rose from her seat, but my actors were already moving, blocking the exits. "This is our story," I continued as the video began. The first clip, Helen and my father, 2 years ago, discussing how to handle the Sarah problem. "She's too independent," Helen said on screen. "But if she was married, declared incompetent, Richard, you'd control everything as her next of kin." The audience gasped. The second clip, my brother negotiating Marcus's fee. 500,000 for the performance, another 500 if you complete the honeymoon plan. Marcus, on screen, nodding. "The accident will look real. I've done stunts before." The third clip, my mother with her lawyer. "Once she's institutionalized, how quickly can we liquidate the assets?" "Within weeks. The facility in Connecticut is very accommodating." The screen continued playing. Every meeting, every email, every horrifying detail of their plan displayed for 500 witnesses. The psychiatric facility's brochures, the forged documents, the planned accident in Bali. But the crown jewel was the recording from that morning. Helen, my father, James, and my mother in the kitchen, toasting with champagne. "To Sarah," my father laughed on screen, "the smartest idiot we know." "By tonight, she'll be on her way to Connecticut," Helen added. "And we'll be millionaires," James finished. The video ended. The tent was silent except for the sound of phones, dozens of phones, as my actors live-streamed everything to social media. "Is this real?" someone whispered. "Call the police," another shouted. "Sarah," my father stood, his face purple. "This is clearly, you're having an episode. You need help." "She's delusional," Helen screamed. "Can't you see she's sick?" But the FBI agents were already entering the tent. I'd timed their arrival perfectly. "Richard Chen, Helen Chen, James Chen, and Patricia Williams, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted kidnapping, attempted murder, and about 20 other charges we'll sort out at the station." As they were led away in handcuffs, I turned to Marcus, still standing at the altar. "Your daughter's surgery is scheduled for next week," I said quietly. The payment's already in your account. Your testimony will help, but you're not walking away clean." He nodded, tears streaming. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry." "I know," I said, and I did. He was just another desperate person my family had exploited. But my family wasn't the only betrayal I uncovered during those 2 months of investigation. Remember Jennifer from HR? And David, my business partner? The wedding video had only been phase 1. While the FBI processed my family at the tent, I walked to the reception hall, still in my wedding dress, where the remaining guests had gathered in shocked clusters. The projection screen was already set up there too. "Before anyone leaves," I announced, "there's more." David, who'd been trying to sneak out, froze at the door. "My business partner, David Morrison, has been stealing from our company for 3 years," I said, as new footage began playing. The screen showed David accessing the company accounts, transferring money to offshore accounts, emails between him and my father, planning to take over once I was institutionalized. "That's fake," David shouted. "She's crazy. You all saw what she did." "The FBI's forensic accountants disagree," I said as more agents entered. $3 million, David. Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" Jennifer from HR tried to run but didn't get far. $50,000 to help gaslight me, I announced as her emails appeared on screen, plus another $30,000 to plant false performance reviews. Jennifer Martinez, everyone, the worst HR manager in Silicon Valley. She was cuffed next to David, but the revelations weren't done. My maid of honor, Sophia, my best friend since middle school, stood frozen in her lavender bridesmaid dress. She'd been mysteriously sick during most of the wedding planning, only showing up for the ceremony itself. "Sophia has something to share too," I said. "Sarah, please." The screen lit up with her text messages, years of them, screenshots she'd sent to my brother of my private conversations, photos from my apartment when I wasn't home, recordings of me crying after breakups, sent to my family with laughing emojis. "She's been your spy for 10 years, I said to the audience, but looking at her. Every secret, every vulnerability, every moment of weakness, reported back for $20,000 a year. "You don't understand," Sophia cried. "They said you were dangerous. They said you needed watching." "I was dangerous," I agreed, to their bank accounts. Sophia wasn't arrested. Being a horrible friend isn't illegal, but the social destruction was complete. The live streams had gone viral. Weddinggate was trending. Her influencer career died in real time as her follower count plummeted. As the reception hall cleared, leaving only scattered roses and abandoned champagne glasses, 3 people remained. Marcus, still in his tuxedo. Kevin, my mother's assistant who'd warned me, and surprisingly, my grandmother's sister, Aunt Linda, whom I barely knew. "I suspected something," Linda said, leaning heavily on her cane. "Your grandmother would have hated this. She left that ring to you, not your father. He had no right to give it away." She pulled out a manila envelope. "Your real inheritance. Your grandmother didn't trust your father either. There's a trust he doesn't know about. $50 million, accessible only to you, only after a betrayal." "After a betrayal?" I stared at the documents. She was specific. "When the family shows its true face," she wrote, "I think this qualifies. $50 million my family never knew existed. My grandmother, even in death, protecting me." Kevin stepped forward nervously. "I have something too. Your mother's been stealing from her clients for years. I've documented everything. She's going away for more than just your situation." "Why?" I asked. "Why help me?" "Because watching them plan this made me sick," he said simply. "And because you deserve to know." Marcus cleared his throat. "The other actors, the ones your family hired, they want to testify. They didn't know the full plan. They thought it was just elaborate matchmaking. 500 witnesses, 50 live streams, and now a small army of accomplices turned witnesses." 6 months later, I sat in a Manhattan courtroom, watching my family get sentenced. The trial had been a media sensation. Every major news outlet covered it. Netflix was already planning a documentary. My father, 25 years for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted kidnapping. Helen, 20 years for the same, plus identity theft, Turns out she'd done this before to her first husband. My brother James, 15 years and disbarment. Oh yeah, he was a lawyer, which made his crimes worse. My mother, 30 years. Kevin's evidence had revealed embezzlement from elderly clients totaling millions. David, 10 years for embezzlement and conspiracy. Jennifer, 5 years and a permanent ban from any HR position. Marcus got probation and community service in exchange for his testimony. His daughter got her surgery. They moved to Portland for a fresh start. Sophia wasn't charged, but lost everything else. Her reputation, her career, her social circle. Last I heard, she was working at a call center in Ohio. As for the extended family and friends who'd participated, most claimed ignorance, but the damage was done. The family name was destroyed. The estate was seized for damages. The empire my father had built crumbled in weeks. But this isn't just a story about revenge. It's about rebuilding. I used my grandmother's inheritance to start a foundation for victims of family fraud. It turns out conservatorship abuse is more common than you'd think. We've helped dozens of families already. My company, freed from David's theft, flourished. We went public last month at a $2 billion valuation. I made sure Jennifer's name appeared in every article about corporate espionage. The family estate was awarded to me in civil court. I turned it into a recovery center for trauma victims. The wedding tent is now a greenhouse where patients grow therapy gardens. I kept one thing from the wedding, the video. Not the betrayal footage, but the live streams. 50 phones captured 500 people learning the truth in real time. It became evidence, but also something more. Proof that when you shine light on darkness, witnesses step forward. Kevin became my personal assistant. He's excellent at spotting lies now. Aunt Linda moved in with me. At 83, she says she's too old for drama but perfect for wisdom. She was right. Marcus sent a letter last week. His daughter is cancer-free and starting college next year. He included a photo from her graduation. They both looked genuinely happy. 1 year after the wedding, I got a request for a prison visit. My father wanted to see me. I almost didn't go. But closure, real closure, requires facing the people who hurt you. He'd aged 10 years and 12 months. The man who'd once commanded boardrooms looked small in his orange jumpsuit. "Sarah," he started, then stopped. We sat in silence for a full minute. "Was any of it real?" I finally asked. "Any moment in my entire childhood?" He considered lying. I saw him weigh it, then slumped. "You were supposed to be a son, someone to take over the business. When you were born, I was disappointed. Your mother never forgave me for saying that out loud." "So you decided to steal from me instead?" "You were too independent, too successful. You didn't need us." He laughed bitterly. "Helen convinced me that if you didn't need us, you'd leave us behind. The money was just insurance." Insurance. I stood to leave. "Sarah, wait." He looked desperate. "Your grandmother's letter, the one with the trust. Did you read all of it?" I had. My grandmother had written about family patterns, about her own father trying to steal her inheritance, about cycles of greed disguised as love. "She warned me about you," I said. "She said the family curse wasn't being poor. It was believing money mattered more than people." "I know," he whispered. "I know that now." I left without saying goodbye. Remember how I said everyone at my wedding knew something I didn't? That was true. But there was something none of them knew. Not my family, not Marcus, not even the FBI. I knew about the plan 6 months before the wedding. A drunk James had let it slip at Christmas, thinking I was too tipsy to remember. "Next year's gonna be different, sis. You'll see. Everything's gonna change after your wedding." "My wedding?" I'd laughed. "I'm not even dating anyone." "Oh, right." He'd backpedaled badly. "I meant when you eventually get married." That night, I'd gone through his phone while he slept off the alcohol, found just enough to be suspicious. That's when I really started watching, listening, documenting. I could have confronted them immediately, could have stopped it all before it started. But then I realized they'd just try again, quieter, smarter, and I'd spend my whole life looking over my shoulder. No, I needed them to commit fully, to believe they'd won, to expose every accomplice, every backup plan, every hidden asset they'd prepared. So I let them introduce me to Marcus, let myself fall for the performance, let them plan their perfect crime while I planned my perfect response. The hardest part was appearing vulnerable enough to be victimized while staying strong enough to survive. Every breakdown they witnessed was calculated, every moment of confusion carefully orchestrated. Marcus almost ruined it when he started developing real feelings. His improvised warnings could have tipped off my family. That's why I had to reveal I knew, to keep him in character until the end. "You knew?" Aunt Linda asked when I finally told her. "The whole time?" "Not the whole time, but long enough." "Why didn't you just walk away?" "Because walking away wouldn't have stopped them, and it wouldn't have saved their future victims." Helen, it turned out, had done this before. 3 times. 3 families destroyed before she met my father. Those families have their money back now, pulled from the assets she'd hidden. My mother had 12 elderly clients she was stealing from. They're all whole now, their futures secured. David had plans for other partners after me. Those people dodged a bullet they never saw coming. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't just surviving a betrayal. It's letting the betrayers think they've won, right until the moment they realize they've lost everything. On the 2-year anniversary of my fake wedding, a package arrived. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Inside was my grandmother's ring, the one Marcus had proposed with, the one that had been seized as evidence. With it was a note from the federal prosecutor. "Thought you should have this back. Your grandmother would be proud. ADA Williams." Williams had been ruthless in court, using my family's own words to destroy them. During closing arguments, she'd said something that stayed with me. "The defendants want you to believe Sarah Chen orchestrated all of this for revenge, but the evidence shows she did something far more dangerous to criminals like them." She told the truth. "I wore the ring to my real wedding last month. Oh, didn't I mention? I got married for real this time." To Alan, the FBI forensic accountant who'd analyzed my family's finances. Turns out spending hundreds of hours unraveling criminal conspiracies together is actually great for building trust. Our wedding had 12 guests, all people who'd proven their loyalty when it mattered. Kevin was my man of honor. Aunt Linda officiated. She got ordained online just for the occasion. Marcus's daughter was our flower girl. She'd insisted after hearing we'd helped save her life. No orchestras, no imported flowers, no 500 witnesses, just real people making real promises. My father sent a letter from prison. I didn't open it. Some apologies come too late to matter. Helen tried to send one too, but Aunt Linda threw it in the fireplace. "Some words don't deserve to be read," she said. "James is apparently writing a book about the whole thing. His lawyer contacted me about the rights. I laughed for 10 minutes straight. My mother maintains her innocence, claims I set her up. The 12 elderly clients she robbed disagree. So does the paper trail Kevin maintained for 5 years. People ask me now, how did I not see it coming? How did I not know my entire family was evil? But that's the thing about family betrayal. It doesn't announce itself. It comes wrapped in concern for your well-being, disguised as love, dressed up as tradition. It sounds like, we only want what's best for you, while picking your pocket. I run seminars now for abuse survivors. I tell them the warning signs. 1. When your success makes your family uncomfortable instead of proud. 2. When they're more interested in your assets than your achievements. 3. When every conversation somehow becomes about money. 4. When they isolate you from outside support systems. 5. When they gaslight you about your own memories and experiences. 6. When they coordinate their stories a little too perfectly. 7. When your instincts scream something's wrong, but you can't name what. But the biggest lesson? Trust your gut. That nagging feeling that made me hire a private investigator? That moment of hesitation before signing papers? That's your survival instinct. Listen to it and document everything. Every weird conversation, every strange request, every family member suddenly interested in your finances. You're not paranoid. You're protecting yourself. Not everyone in this story stayed a villain. Marcus reached out last month. Not for money or forgiveness, just to say thank you. His daughter is thriving. Pre-med at Columbia, full scholarship. He's teaching acting to underprivileged kids now, using his skills for something worthwhile. I teach them to spot manipulation too, he wrote, to recognize when someone's performing emotions instead of feeling them. Figured I owed the world that much. 3 of the actors my family hired have become activists against elder abuse and conservatorship fraud. They testified in Congress last month about how easy it was to fake a mental health crisis. The laws are changing because of their testimony. Even some of the wedding guests, the real ones, not the actors, have reached out. They were horrified to learn they'd been props in my family's scheme. A few have donated to my foundation. One couple even named their daughter Sarah, after the woman who showed us what courage looks like. But the most unexpected redemption came from someone I'd written off entirely, my father's brother, Uncle Robert, whom I hadn't seen in 15 years due to a business dispute with my father. He showed up at my office last week with a box of photos and documents. I knew Richard was capable of this, he said. I should have warned you, but I thought staying away would keep you safe. The box contained evidence of my father's first attempt at this kind of scheme, against Robert himself 20 years ago. Robert had escaped by cutting all ties and moving to Canada. You did what I couldn't, he said. You stood and fought. You won. We have dinner once a month now. He tells me stories about my grandmother, about the family before greed poisoned it. He's teaching me recipes she never got to pass down, traditions that had nothing to do with money. Last week, I found one last secret. While renovating the family estate into the recovery center, contractors discovered a hidden room in the basement. Inside were journals. My grandmother's journals, dating back 60 years. She documented everything. Every financial manipulation, every family betrayal, every generation repeating the same patterns. But the final entry, written a week before her death, was addressed to me. My dear Sarah, if you're reading this, then they've shown you who they really are. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better, but I've done what I could. The trust is yours, not just the money, but the truth. Your father isn't evil, just weak. He learned from his father that love was transaction, that family was commodity. Your mother learned the same from hers. They're broken people breaking others. But you were always different. You built instead of taking, created instead of destroying. That's why they fear you, because you don't need them. The ring I left you has an inscription inside, too small to read without a jeweler's loop. It says, family isn't blood, it's choice. Choose wisely, my dear one. And when they come for what you've built, and they will, remember that the best revenge isn't destroying them. It's surviving them, thriving despite them, and breaking the cycle for the next generation. All my love, grandmother. I had the ring's inscription enlarged and hung in the recovery center's main hall. Underneath, I added my own. To everyone who's been betrayed by those who should have protected them, you survived. That's your first victory. Everything else is just aftermath. They planned my wedding for 2 years. They forgot to tell me one thing, that none of it was real. But in showing me their true faces, they gave me something priceless. Freedom. Freedom from wondering if they really loved me. Freedom from guilt about walking away. Freedom from the obligation to forgive the unforgivable. My name is Sarah Chen. I'm 32 years old. I survived my family's betrayal, my partner's deception, my best friend's espionage, and my own wedding. And if you're watching this because someone you trust has betrayed you, know this. You're not crazy. You're not paranoid. You're not overreacting. You're surviving. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything.